The night winds of Zifra Prime cut, like blades across the barren tundra, whipping icy grit into every seam of Marcus Hale's survival gear. He had been stationed on this frozen colony world for 6 months now, assigned as a surveyor for the Terran Expansion Corps. His job was simple in theory: chart mineral deposits, record alien weather cycles, and avoid getting killed by either frostbite or the planet's unpredictable wildlife. But simple didn't mean easy. His camp sat in the middle of an endless white expanse, lit only by the twin moons that hung like watchful eyes in the star-choked sky. The nearest human outpost was almost 300 kilometers away, and the storm season made long-distance travel impossible. He was, for all intents and purposes, alone. Or at least he had thought so. On his 7th night, as he huddled inside his reinforced thermal tent, Marcus heard something faint beneath the howl of the wind. A sound that didn't belong. A cry. Muffled. Weak. Not human. He unzipped the tent flap and was immediately smacked in the face by the freezing gust. His visor frosted over in seconds, but he forced his eyes open. Just beyond the perimeter lights of his camp, something moved. A figure collapsed half buried in the snow, arms trembling as if clawing toward safety. Marcus's training told him to be cautious. Unknown life forms could be dangerous, but instinct overruled protocol. He dashed into the blizzard, boots crunching, and crouched beside the fallen figure. It was a girl, or at least, she looked like one. Her skin was a soft shade of indigo, her hair silver white and braided with what looked like bone beads. She wore shredded furs, soaked through, and her lips were trembling so violently he thought her teeth might crack. Hey, I've got you, Marcus muttered, though he knew she wouldn't understand his language. He slid his arms under her, surprised at how light she was, and carried her back to the tent. Inside, the sudden blast of heat from his thermal generator fogged the air. He set her down on his cot, unfastened her soaked furs, and pulled the insulated blanket over her. She coughed, eyes fluttering open, eyes the color of molten gold, and stared at him in confusion and terror. "It's okay," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "You're safe." She didn't reply. Instead, she curled tighter under the blanket, eyes never leaving his face. Marcus sat back, running a hand over his short-cropped hair. He wasn't sure what to do. The colonists had heard rumors of natives on this planet, small clans that lived beyond the tundra in hidden valleys, but official surveys had never confirmed their existence. And now, one of them was shivering in his tent. The days after, she stayed. At first, Marcus assumed it was temporary, that once she recovered, she'd vanish back into snow. But each day, she lingered in his camp, watching him work with wary curiosity. She spoke little, her words a liquid tongue that he couldn't decipher. But communication came through gestures, expressions, and the cautious bridge of necessity. He learned her name was Syra. She learned his was Marcus. She seemed fascinated by his equipment, especially the small heater at the center of the tent. Each night she crept closer to it, hands stretched out like a worshiper before an altar. Marcus would smile and shake his head, sliding another thermal blanket her way. He thought she only wanted warmth, safety, and food, and he was glad to provide it. After all, she had nowhere else to go, and he didn't have the heart to send her back into the blizzards. But one night, everything changed. The misunderstanding. The storm was worse than usual, the kind that rattled the tent poles and made Marcus fear they might be ripped out of the ground. He was sitting cross-legged on his cot, reviewing survey data on his handheld tablet, when Syra approached. She was wrapped in one of his blankets, her silver hair loose around her shoulders. She crouched in front of him, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "Cold," she whispered, the first Terran word he'd ever heard her speak. Marcus blinked. "You're learning," he said with a smile. He patted the space beside him. "Sit. Warmer here." She hesitated only a second before sliding onto the cot beside him. He adjusted the blanket around her shoulders, expecting her to curl up and rest. But instead, she leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his chest. He froze. You're okay. Just warm up, that's all," he muttered nervously. But Syra tilted her head back, golden eyes meeting his, and said something in her own tongue. He didn't understand the words, but the meaning was impossible to mistake. Her hands rested lightly on his chest, trembling, not from cold this time, but from something deeper. Marcus's heart thumped. "Wait, no, that's not... Look, I didn't bring you in here for that. You don't have to." She frowned, confusion flickering across her face. Clearly, in her culture, the gesture meant something entirely different. To her, pressing close under shared warmth might have been a sign of gratitude, of bonding, or of trust. But to him, it meant something dangerously intimate. He gently placed his hands over hers and shook his head. "Not like that, Syra. Not that." For a tense moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the storm outside. Then, slowly, she seemed to understand. Her cheeks flushed a deeper shade of indigo, and she pulled away, curling back in the blanket with wide, embarrassed eyes. Marcus exhaled in relief and guilt. He didn't want her to think he'd rejected her kindness, only that their worlds didn't quite align. But that moment of misunderstanding would soon spiral into something far larger. The clan's arrival. 3 days later, Marcus woke to a strange sound outside his tent, a low, rhythmic thumping, like drums beating through the snow. He slipped into his boots and stepped out, squinting against the pale dawn. What he saw made his blood run cold. Dozens of figures were emerging from the mist. Tall warriors clad in bone and fur armor, carrying long spears tipped with obsidian. Behind them came others, elders draped in ceremonial robes, hunters with packs of wolf-like beasts, and finally, a man whose presence silenced the storm itself. The chief. Syra rushed past Marcus, her face alight with emotion. She ran straight to the towering man and threw herself into his arms. The chief held her tightly, relief written across his stern features. Marcus realized with a jolt. He had rescued the chief's daughter. The warriors turned their eyes to him, spears lowered. The packed beast growled. Marcus raised his hand slowly, trying not to show fear. Syra spun around, shouting something sharp and urgent in her language. The chief's eyes narrowed as he regarded Marcus. Then he barked a command, and the warriors hesitated, their weapons still poised but no longer advancing. Syra hurried back to Marcus's side, grabbing his arm and pressing it against her chest as she spoke rapidly to her father. Marcus stood frozen, trying to piece together the meaning. The chief finally stepped forward. He was massive, shoulders broad as a wall, his golden eyes like Syra's but fiercer. He placed one hand on Marcus's shoulder, gripping it hard enough to make him wince. Then, in broken Terran, the chief growled, "You saved my child." Marcus swallowed. Yes, she was dying. I just wanted to help. The chief studied him, then nodded once. You, friend, Clan Olife. The warriors raised their spears in salute. The air thrummed with voices chanting something Marcus couldn't hope to understand. But Syra's smile told him enough. The new bond. The clan stayed for 2 days, camped near Marcus's tent. They brought food, strange meats roasted over open flames, and taught him words from their tongue. In return, he showed them his survey maps, his technology, his heater. They marveled, but also warned him. The tundra held dangers greater than storms. Rival clans, predators, even the shifting ice itself. On the last night before they departed, the chief approached Marcus's tent. Syra was beside him, her gaze soft but steady. You, the chief said gruffly, pointing at Marcus. Come, clan's safe with you. Marcus frowned. You mean join you? The chief didn't answer. Instead, he pressed a carved bone pendant into Marcus's palm, a symbol of trust, of kinship. Syra touched his hand lightly. Not cold anymore, she whispered. And Marcus finally understood. She hadn't sought warmth in his tent just for survival. She had sought something rarer on this desolate world. Connection. Epilogue. When the clan departed into the mist, Syra lingered for one last glance. She touched her forehead to Marcus's chest once more, the gesture that had once confused him so deeply. But now, he pressed his hand gently against the back of her head, accepting it for what it truly meant. A promise. When he returned to his duties, Marcus no longer felt alone in the endless snow. The memory of Syra's golden eyes, her misunderstood warmth, and a clan that accepted him would stay with him always. And somewhere out there beyond the blizzards, he knew he had a place, not just in the Terran Expansion Corps, but in the heart of an alien people.